For times when we want to help the flexibility and strengthen our back, or work a little bit maybe on soreness in the lower back, arthritis in the spine. Most of them are seated, a few standing. We're going to think about feet flat on the floor, sitting up nice and tall, pulling our shoulders up before we roll them down and back. Chin parallel to the floor. Tuning into our breath as always, making sure we're moving that breath on a Ferris wheel, belly moving out, rib cage, heart lifting on our inhale, then working with the chest, the rib cage, the spine, pulling back on that belly so that we get that circular motion around and around. Breathing in through our nose, out through our nose, slow, gentle. And as we start our asanas today, we're just going to start working around through the midsection, just doing a little bit of hula hoop move, just turning around in gentle circles. Then we're going to reverse direction, turning in the opposite way. We're going to add a little more to this, stepping our feet further apart, bringing our hands together, interlace fingers with straight arms, or maybe bending the arms if our shoulders are tight today. Just doing some circles if we were churning butter. Exhaling as we come forward, inhaling as we come back. Trying to stretch the spine, stretch the muscles of the back as we lean forward, and then contracting those muscles, building up their strength as we come back. Reversing direction for a couple turns. Then we're going to come back, bringing our feet underneath our knees, and maybe planting our hands so that our thumbs are outside our legs and our palms are facing forward so that we get the most mobility possible through the shoulders. We're going into our cat and cow. So imagine ourselves as that black cat on Halloween, arching its back, trying to push our waistline, our rib cage way back into the chair as the shoulders roll forward, chin drops into chest. Then as we come forward, the belly pulls out toward our knees, we pull the rib cage forward. The elbows open to the side as we lift our chin up toward the chest. Working from the lowest part of the spine, so we work to the sacral, the lumbar, thoracic, and cervical spine in that order. Trying to exaggerate that movement forward as much as possible. Really lifting the heart up, watching the bend of the neck, not compressing the cervical spine. Just feeling that articulation of the vertebra from top as the last part to move, always starting with the bottom. And then we're going to come back to neutral, and we're going to do a little bit of folding forward gently, just rounding our back as we place our hands on our thighs, coming into a child's pose from a seated position. Taking a deep breath in, sitting up tall again. Maybe this time taking our hands down toward our shins so we can come forward a little more, thinking about leading with the belly down toward our legs, then letting our head drop down. Maybe nodding our head yes, shaking our head no. Maybe dropping our arms further so they're resting on our ankles or all the way to the floor. Deep breath in, sitting up tall. And taking ourselves to a spinal twist, we're thinking about always starting with moving to the lowest part of the torso. So we pulse on our back hip. We're going to rotate through the belly, then we're going to pull the rib cage around before we worry about pulling the shoulder toward the back. We're going to bring our hand close to our body, as close to our midline as we can, maybe turning our chin to look out over our shoulder. But we're making sure that we're not pulling the shoulders back behind the hips, that the spine is 90 degrees off our surface. We work with our breath, lifting on our inhale and turning a little deeper on our exhale. Keeping that flexibility in the spine and then coming back to center. We can switch to the opposite side now. I will come back to the same side just so I'm not turning my back to you. So I will pulse on the hip from which I am moving, rotate through the belly, the rib cage, the heart, collarbone coming straight across as I work the muscles of my back shoulder, pulling that shoulder back so it's lining up with the front shoulder, not collapsing forward. Bringing my hand to rest at my midline as close as possible, turning chin to look out over shoulder. And then slowly rotating toward the back. We're going to stand for a while. And we're going to think about the way we should be moving our hips whenever we're working and considering the back. We have the pelvic girdle, fused bones. Iliac crest is the bony part in the front from the iliacus bone on the side. We've got the tailbone well back behind us. And anytime we do any kind of movement forward, we're thinking about doing an anterior pelvic tilt. We're going to start pushing the tailbone behind us, taking this bony part in the same direction that the shoulders are going, leaning forward. We can bring our hands down to our thighs, just so we can feel that increasing stretch through the back of the hips, the lower back. And then we're going to come up and stand up tall. Anytime we move forward, we don't want to have the arms straight forward and leaning with that because we're putting all the weight of the arms and the shoulder into our fold. So we bring our arms either down our legs on the side or on the front, or we snow angel them around to the side. And we're going to keep slowly coming down. Maybe bringing our hands all the way to the floor, maybe bringing our hands to our ankles, keeping the hands against something so that we don't have all that extra weight pulling into the lower back. We have the back supported. Thinking about keeping a straight line from the feet up through the knees, up through the hips, by keeping our weight balance between the ball of the foot and the heel of the foot, making sure we're not either rolling forward or backward, spreading our toes wide. And as we come up, we're going to stretch our arms out to the side and bring the hands high to the sky. Lifting up, doing a little bit of side bend to stretch out through the side of the body. We're going to either take our hand to our hip, let it slide down the side of our leg, or keep our hands together as we lean over to the side. Thinking about lifting the shoulder away from the rib cage away from the hip, trying to get as much of a stretch as we can of the muscles of the back before we come back to center and go in the opposite direction. And again, we can have our hand sliding down our leg, we can have our hand on our hip, or we can keep both hands together, whichever allows us the most freedom of motion to get the best possible bend and stretch the muscles on the side of the body, the back, the shoulder. And then coming back towards center, we're going to think about doing the kind of tilt, posterior tilt, that we want to do with every back bend, whether we're on the floor, whether we're seated, whether we're standing. And that's going to be a posterior tilt. So the iliac crest is going to come up and back because that's the direction our shoulders are going. The tailbone is going to gently move forward. We might even let the heels come out just a little bit to get more mobility in that hip socket. We can place the hands on the small of our back and make fists with our hands. But we think about zipping and stretching in the front. So we go from our pubic bone to our navel, to our solar plexus, to our heart, to the middle of our chin. Watching the bend of the neck, not bending so far back that we're not able to breathe slowly and deeply. Continuously working with our breath to see if we can get back a little bit further. Lift a little higher. Feel the muscles of the back contracting and strengthening as we stretch through the front of the body. And then standing nice and tall. We're going to turn around and put our hands on the seat of the chair so that we can do another cat and cow. We might find when we're either in this position or we're kneeling down on the floor that we get a little bit more mobility through the shoulders and the hips, the lower back. So we're going to do exactly what we did before. We're going to start by arching the back, going into that cat pose, rolling the chin last in toward our chest, and then starting the moment with the tailbone, dropping our belly down, dropping our rib cage down, lastly lifting the head. And going from the lowest part of our spine, stretching upward, and coming forward, articulating each vertebra again. Making sure that we always start sacral, lumbar, thoracic, cervical spine in that order. And now we're going to work on stretching all the way down the back. So we're going to walk our feet back. We want to get so far back that we can get our hips and our feet in straight line. But we want to keep dropping the shoulders down to the ground. We don't want to bend between our hands and our tailbone. So we keep dropping the shoulders down toward our toes until we can get a straight line from our hands. Real peak at the tailbone. We're feeling the stretch more and more through the lower back. The straighter we can get that back. Probably feeling a stretch through the hamstring, through the shoulders as well. And now we're going into another twist, a standing twist. We're going to step our front foot forward. We're going to stretch the other one back as far as we can to come into a lunge. We're going to take this to a twist. So we have some options here depending upon how deeply we want to drop, whether we want to take our hand to the floor, the back hand, the hand of the long leg, or whether or not we want to put our forearm on the chair. But we're going to do the same thing we did on our seated twist. We pulse on the hip we're moving from. We rotate through the belly, we rotate through the rib cage. We lift the top shoulder over the bottom shoulder before we think about moving the hand. Same rule as with our forward fold, getting the shoulders, the back in place first helps protect our back as we move. And then we're going to come back to our starting point. We'll go into another down dog. Same thing we did before, trying not to keep the shoulders lifted, but pushing down, pushing down, pushing down till we get a straight line. And we'll step forward with the opposite foot, moving in the opposite direction, but so I don't put my back to you, I'm going to use the same foot. Same thing again, long leg goes back as far as we can, front knee and the ankle stays in alignment. And we either choose to put our hand on the floor or on the seat of the chair as we rotate around and lift that hand so that it's directly over our lower hand. Shoulders aligned, getting the back move first before we extend the arms out. And then slowly rotating back towards center. Planting both hands on the chair so we can step our feet together and come around to another seated position. As our down dog really stretches the body from a standing position, our seated forward fold, Paschimottanasana, will do the same thing from a seated pose. So we're first of all going to make sure we're well seated on the chair. We might want to hold on to the side of the chair, making sure we don't slip off. We're going to flex our feet, pulling our toes in toward our head so that we keep working through the muscles of the legs. But now we're going to do that same forward fold, that pelvic tilt, tightening the abdominals, tightening the quadriceps, bringing our belly as low as we can down toward our legs. Holding onto the seat of the chair to make sure that we're well established, we're not going to slide off. And from here, without twisting the shoulders, we're going to start sliding our hand out toward our foot, stopping when we feel that we've reached a position that allows our muscles to relax without strain. We might be able to reach the toes, the side of the foot. If we can do so without losing our foundation on the chair, we can use the other arm simultaneously, or we can reach one hand back and reach with the other one. But again, making sure that we're not lifting the shoulders out of alignment parallel to the floor, just coming as far forward as we can. And then slowly sitting up. Planting our feet flat on the floor, we'll take our hands and push them out straight in front of us, really pushing away, getting the back stretched as far as we can. Then we're going to bend the arms, bringing the hand to the opposite elbow, keeping a rectangle with our arms, the shoulders even with the elbows. And we're going to take one leg and cross it over the other. We're going to move the elbows to one side as we turn our chin and our legs to the opposite. Coming back towards center, twisting again, back towards center, twisting again, and then holding the twist as we did, turning into the bent leg, rotating around to the side, coming back towards center, planting both feet on the floor, interlacing our fingers and pressing forward. Really feeling that stretch across the top of the shoulders, the upper back, and then hand to opposite elbow as we cross the opposite leg over, the arms move in the reverse direction of the neck and the knees. Just a gentle twisting motion. And then planting our feet on the floor, deciding whether or not we want to go into additional asanas today. working with another video, or maybe just sitting here quietly for a few minutes so that we can just do a little bit of quiet reflection, resting, relaxing. Stretching arms high to the sky, palms together. Namaste.